Welcome back, everybody, to Fantasy Fest right here on Fantasy Pros. Don't forget to like the stream. Don't forget to click that little bell till it goes ding and subscribe to Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. That's what we're doing here. We've got another great conversation with great guests. We have got Justin Boone back from the score yet again. You know why? Because he just likes spending time here with us. In fact, I think we're going to have to make a little, bring in a cot for him or like a guest bedroom because he's been on the show the last couple weeks with us so much. He's joining us. Either that or you got to get a hobby, Boone. One of the two things.
You guys keep hiring all my favorite people, so I want to just keep coming and hanging out. In the last show I was on, we were joking about me coming over to your house, which is going to happen. I was going to say, is that a joke? It doesn't feel like a joke. It felt very real.
And I say more the merrier because somebody has to try to beat me in Madden because Erickson and Debro failed miserably. And also one of our favorite people, Tera Roberts, the winner of the Tags Rising Star Award from this year, 2023. And of course, one of our hosts, you know her from Fantasy Pros and all the other million places that she's doing amazing work. Tera, it's great to see you. You're rocking the Clemson shirt today too. So how you feeling about the Clemson team going into week 0 here?
I'm feeling, we'll put it that way. No. I'm hoping for the best, but I'm okay with the worst. It's good.
Okay.
It's good.
All right. Well, you know, when you have that national championship a couple of years ago, I think it all, you know, it's like me as a Patriots fan.
You can
it's
always
like
back off.
Nobody cares if I'm disappointed. Like, it doesn't matter. I've well outlived the disappointment of any possible things with my football team. So that I'm very lucky for. And we're lucky to have these two with us because we're going to be talking about a very important thing, which is, I keep saying this every single year. When you are looking at the draft boards, you're constantly looking now for players to outperform their ADP, and more than ever at the position of wide receiver. So I always like to look at wide receiver 4s so we can draft as wide receiver 3s, wide receiver 3s that have to jump possibly to number 2 and number 2s and go to 1s. And specifically, we're going to drill down on some of these guys, that wide receiver 3 position right now in ADP that might have a shot of jumping not 1 tier, but 2. And I love this conversation because this is how you win leagues. And Tera, I want to start with somebody on your list. So we're going to do 5 for Justin, 5 for Tera. Tera, let's start with somebody on your list that you think has a chance to make that leap again from wide receiver 3 to a wide receiver 1 and possibly win somebody a league.
As the offseason has gone on, I find myself falling more and more in love with this guy. Not that I wasn't already, but it's just growing and growing. Drake London is one for me, who I think has legitimate wide receiver 1 upside. The Falcons offense, we could talk about it. It's oddly stacked with extreme talent. Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. And a lot of people are skeptical because we're asking a lot of Desmond Ridder with all of these guys. And we're not getting a discount really on all of these ADPs. I mean, Drake London obviously has the lowest, but at the same time, we're sitting here trying to figure out if this is somebody who can really pop within an offense that might be a little bit sketchy moving forward. Looking at 2022, the offensive passing stats for the Falcons were literally one of the worst in the league. Second fewest pass attempts in the league, just 17 total passing touchdowns. But we got to take into account that the majority of that was with Marcus Mariota at quarterback. And we're not going to see a massive uptick in volume with Ridder at quarterback because, again, it's a run-first offense. That's not going to change. We're going to get heavy Bijan, of course. Carries are going to be through the roof. But we will see an increase in pass volume, and we might see some increased efficiency as well with Desmond Ridder. So the offense will be better, and it's not going to be a top-tier offense, but I'm confident that there's enough there to support the talent that we have. And we do have a small sample size of what could be. The Falcons last year transitioned to Desmond Ridder in week 15. And from that point forward, Drake London was wide receiver 18 in PPR. And that was without Kyle Pitts, but it is still achievable. I'm very confident that London is obviously the clear wide receiver 1 in this offense and has legitimate low-end wide receiver 1 upside with some increased stability at quarterback.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown of Drake London. It's a talent I think we all forget how excited we were to see last year. And because it was Marcus Mariota, I don't know why the bloom is so far off the rose. And I think it's gone too far. And I'm with you. I'm starting to look around now in these drafts. And I'm seeing Drake London just kind of slide and slide and slide. But that same talent that we saw going into draft season 2 years ago, like it's the same guy like that we want to draft now. All right, let's get to one of your guys here. Who's a wide receiver 3 that has the possibility to end up as a wide receiver 1, Boone, in 23?
I'm going with Brandon Aiyuk, and anybody that follows my content.
Brandon Aiyuk, baby.
Yeah, anybody that follows my content, listens to the Score Fantasy Football podcast, they know how much I love him. Incredible talent, has that first round draft capital from a few years ago. But even when you just look at what he's done, I mean, wide receiver 15 in fantasy points per game as a rookie in 2020. And there were some injuries in the offense that cleared things up, but there's also a few guys in that offense that have some durability concerns, right? So we could see something like that happen again. He was wide receiver 22 in fantasy points per game in 2021. And that was in the last 10 outings. And that was because there was that whole situation with Kyle Shanahan, had him in the doghouse early in the year. And fortunately, he emerged and he slowly started to turn into this fantastic receiver. And then last year, we got the real breakout, 78 grabs, over 1,000 yards, 8 scores, finished as the wide receiver 24 in fantasy points per game. And then this offseason, everyone around the team, everyone with the organization just continues to talk about how this guy's unguardable, his development's continued, and he is going to be, in my opinion, the number one receiver in this offense moving forward. I know people like Debo. Joe, we talked about it when we did the mock draft episode recently, that I think Debo's going a little bit too high. You have to take him in like the third round or so. You can get Aiyuk a couple rounds later. I think you should be taking that value. I'm really excited to see what he can do this year. I think he has top 12 talent. The only question is, can he get the volume to support that? We don't know that for sure, but that's why we're mentioning these guys, because if things line up right for him, he could end up being a wide receiver 1.
Agreed. Again, and I think the perfect point you're making is very clear, which is Debo has risk at his price. Aiyuk might have some risk at his price, but it's a lot cheaper price to find out. If you're wrong, it doesn't sink your fantasy team. Where if you're wrong about Debo, I think it could if you take him a little bit too early. Tara, let's go to you for your number 4 pick here. Again, wide receiver 3s that ready to make the jump, maybe even as high as wide receiver 1. Who's next on your list?
For the record, I too love Brandon Aiyuk. Another guy
that
I love.
We all love Brandon Aiyuk, everybody.
Yes,
so
Brandon Aiyuk.
Put Brandon Aiyuk on your cheat sheets, everybody, on Draft Wizard. Take him all the way up there. Again, use the Draft Wizard. Download the app. Make sure Brandon Aiyuk is highlighted everywhere. And that way you're on board with Tara and myself and Justin Boone. There you go. All right, Tara, who's next? Besides Brandon Aiyuk, who else you love?
Another guy that I love and I want so much better for, and hopefully this is it, Michael Pittman, heading into his 4th year. And despite all of the atrocities that he's had to deal with at quarterback, I mean, it seems harsh, but I mean, it's been painful. Matt Ryan last year, just alone, Matt Ryan, Sam Ellinger, Nick Foles. It was not fair, right? It's not fair for someone to have to deal with that. But despite all that, he has finished as an overall top 20 receiver for the past 2 years. And this year, maybe the Colts have finally got it right. We can cross our fingers that fantasy managers can finally cash in on Michael Pittman's talent, the elusive upside that he offers, because it's there. He can be a wide receiver 1. He's just had terrible, terrible luck his entire career as the Colts have tried these retread quarterbacks over and over and over again. And they finally got themselves a rookie. And let's hope that this is it for him. Because there will be some growing pains, obviously, with Anthony Richardson, but at least we know that he can stay on his feet and he can throw the ball downfield. And that seems basic, right? But if you watched any of the Colts games last year, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's literally what we need for Michael Pittman to be able to have that wide receiver 1 type of season. They just need a quarterback that can get the ball more than a few yards past the line of scrimmage. And then Pittman will literally have wide receivers 1 upside. And while some people, I know you're still skeptical of Pittman's ADP, even though it is extremely low for the talent that he actually is, more than likely you're probably going to be able to get an even bigger discount, because if it's not low enough for you, don't worry. Your league mates all feel the same exact way, getting burned over and over and over again with Michael Pittman. So I've watched and I think it really is.
When it comes to Pittman too, I guess here's my question. So much of this has to be the Anthony Richardson faith. So do you have faith in Anthony Richardson can, in your words, get past the atrocities at least? Because if he can be good with the atrocities, that's one thing, but this is a guy who also does not have a lot of experience, unfortunately. He has a ton of talent and a ton of those things that you're looking for in what is the modern day quarterback now. So do you have faith in Richardson being able to, despite any Jonathan Taylor noise or whatever's going on in that situation, help Pittman get to that next level? Because that's what he would have to do in order to get to wide receiver 1.
I do. And with Anthony Richardson, it's kind of a tough one because from a fantasy perspective from him, that's another story in terms of whether or not we're going to be able to consistently start him. Although I do think you should still be drafting him. It's just risky. But in terms of what he can provide for stability for Michael Pittman, I believe in it. So I do think that this is the quarterback. I love the fact that he has, the arm strength and everything that Pittman needs to really thrive. What we saw last year from him is that he just struggled. They weren't utilizing him down the field. Everything was so close to the line of scrimmage. And I think that'll change now that we've got Anthony Richardson in there. So yes, I think Anthony Richardson is going to be a solution to kind of help Michael Pittman move forward.
If you want a chance to win a glorious 36-inch fantasy championship trophy for your league, courtesy of our good pals over at Trophy Smack, the #1 destination for epic fantasy tournament trophies, you need to subscribe to Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below in this video, and that's it. That's all you got to do. We'll be announcing a winner today, so stick around for all of Fantasy Fest and make sure you turn on those notifications so you can claim your prize, which is that incredible trophy, courtesy of Trophy Smack. Okay, let's get to your number 4 on your list. Justin Boone, wide receiver 3, is ready to make a jump maybe to wide receiver 1. Who do you have?
I'm going with Mike Williams, and this is a guy, and this might be a theme for some of the ones I have coming up here. This is a guy who's done it before. I mean, you look 2 years ago, the Chargers commit to him. They told us before the season, Herbert came out and said, we got to get this guy the ball more. And they did it. And the results were 76 receptions. He had over 1,100 yards, and he had a top 12 fantasy finish in fantasy points per game. And that's among qualified receivers, because I take out, the guys who just play one game and have a monster game. We're not counting those guys. And that is in half PPR as well. Then you look at last year. So he missed 5 games around the middle of the season. He basically missed 6 because the other game he barely played at all. So if we take the stats from the 12 games where he actually played, and he was out there for starter snaps, you take that, he was on pace in those games for 88 catches, over 1,200 yards, and 6 touchdowns, which, guess what, would have made him the wide receiver 11 on the year. So there's been some talk that Quentin Johnston's there now, and that could eat into what Mike Williams does. But it seems like what we're hearing right now is that Quentin Johnston might be kind of more slow acclimating to the pros than we expected. He's been 4th on the depth chart. So maybe he's not going to step in right away and impact those top 2 guys. So I think Mike Williams right now is the #1 receiver in this offense. It depends how you look at it. Keenan Allen's kind of the safety blanket, right? Like Keenan Allen's probably going to get more receptions and more targets. But Mike Williams is the #1 guy, and Mike Williams is the one that I think has the upside to be that wide receiver 1 this season. And we've seen him hit double-digit touchdowns before. I think this could be a year where we see that happen again.
I hope you're right, because last year I was very much in on Mike Williams, and I very much felt like a bus ran over me at times during the season. So that's the struggle. I think we all see the potential there, and you're right, the potential is there. So in the context of the show, you're 1,000% correct, which is a really high number. But at the same time, that it's really hard to get past those missed games, because when you miss games and you're a zero. You're a zero, and then I got to go find somebody else to plug in. But you're 100% right. The opportunity's there. And the same thing with Pittman. I think you both picked 2 guys that I feel like every draft room has so much concern that maybe if they get to a certain point in ADP where they just keep falling in your draft and falling, that maybe that draft board looks good enough where you just say, hey, let's take a shot on them. Maybe even a wide receiver 4. So I could see those guys both slipping to wide receiver 4 in certain rooms where people are just straight up afraid of them. All right, let's get to number 3 on your list, Tera. Who do you think is a wide receiver 3 right now being drafted as such, who could move all the way up to 1 if everything broke right?
Justin and I are twinning because that is the exact same logic. I've seen it before with this guy, and we know he can be a wide receiver 1, and it's just a matter of that potential being tapped in. Again, we've factually seen it happen. Diontae Johnson is that guy for me. Obviously, when he was the wide receiver 1, those were different times, but we know he has the upside and capability. Honestly, when I look at ADP, like pound for pound, rank for rank, I think he's truly the best bargain in your fantasy draft. Because again, it's purely about numbers. We saw massive regression for him, the most dramatic regression of any healthy player in 2022. Targets, receptions, yards, and touchdowns, 0. That's wild. Statistically, very unlikely that that's going to happen again. We're going to look here and we're going to see positive regression. All that happened, all of that regression, and he still finished as the wide receiver 30 in PPR. So we're literally looking at drafting him in the worst possible scenario in a situation where last year was a rough transition for Kenny Pickett. But all signs are indicating that he's going to make a stronger push this season, and Johnson could be a big beneficiary. Strong bounce back candidate. And again, what makes him such a bargain is that ADP is literally perfect. It is at the worst case scenario that happened last year. And we know that he's got the wide receiver 1 potential. So he's someone that I feel super comfortable with drafting and potentially getting a wide receiver 1.
Fun fact, I'm looking at these names here as we're talking about them. Brandon Aiyuk, going to be working probably, looks like Brock Purdy, second-year quarterback. Drake London, Desmond Ridder, second-year quarterback. Diontae Johnson, second-year quarterback. Anthony Richardson, rookie quarterback, like for Michael Pittman. So we're talking about some of these guys too. Like so much of this faith is not even just in the wide receivers. We're putting faith in these quarterbacks to be able to get the most out of the talent they have around them. Because that's always the frustrating thing in fantasy, right? You have these guys that you love the talent. And then, wide receiver, you need somebody to throw you the football. This ain't like running back where you need the O-line and just hand the ball and just let them go. It's a whole different set of circumstances with these guys. You have to have good quarterback play and consistent quarterback play for them to reach what their potential is. And I think that's always every year that sets us in a bad spot. And so you get teased with the potential of the talent and the quarterbacks, especially this year and last year. It's there potentially to let us down, unfortunately. All right, let's get to another name on your list. Number 3 on your list of wide receiver 3s and get to a 1. I have a feeling we're going to fight about this one here, Boone.
I partially wanted to put him on here because I know you made us think about it when he got selected. And I agree that it seemed like he was selected a little bit high. I think Erickson took him in like the 4th round. That did seem maybe a little bit high in that draft that we did. But the potential for Chris Godwin, I mean, you just go back and look at what he's done, right? He finishes the wide receiver 2 in fantasy points per game and half PPR in 2019. That was his big season. Wide receiver 16 in 2020, wide receiver 11 in 2021. And then last year, he's coming off a torn ACL and he puts up wide receiver 20 fantasy numbers. And it didn't look great. We can all agree on that. It was very volume based. But now some things are going to change. He's feeling a lot healthier. He's now 2 years removed from that ACL tear. And yes, he loses Tom Brady and he has to go to Baker Mayfield. That's horrendous. That is going to be terrible. Tom Brady threw the ball over 700 times, but it's not like we're going to see this offense now throw 400 times. They're still going to throw the ball a lot. They're going to be trailing a lot. I don't think this team is going to be very good. There's also been talk that Mike Evans could get traded. We see that Russell Gage got hurt. He's out for the season. That could mean more slot snaps for Godwin. So I really think when you look at it and you put together the fact that the Bucs have the 4th easiest fantasy receiver schedule in my strength of schedule matrix, that helps too. I think there's a good chance that a healthy Godwin now is going to be right back up there, and that Mike Evans is the one that could have a harder time potentially with Baker Mayfield trying to connect with him downfield. We might see a lot of short stuff to Godwin. I think he's going to be able to produce, and it will be hard, I think, with Baker Mayfield for him to be a top 12 guy. I think the potential's there, and I think he's a lot better than where he's going in drafts.
I like the player, but believe me, I do. It's just the enormous volume that Tom Brady takes with him. Like, and he also, the knowledge and all the things that Tom Brady took with him. I think even last year we saw things unravel there. I think it was a lot worse than we even realize. And I think personally speaking, from watching them last year, that as bad as Tom Brady was at times, he was hiding some of the worst that is lurking in that locker room, in that offense. I agree with you 100%. Mike Evans, I'm not touching with a 10-foot pole. Tara, how do you feel about Chris Godwin? I don't think I've gotten your take on him because he scares the crap out of me. I'll be honest. Like, that's a player that I get where Justin's saying, and I get the volume could be there. And then people want to point to Jameis Winston, his incredible year with Godwin. We were just throwing the ball all over the place. But that was Bruce Arians. This is not the same offense where Bruce Arians is like, yeah, just, chuck and duck. Let's go. What do you think about Godwin this year? Is that somebody that you're intrigued if he falls in the right spot?
I'm sorry, Joe. I am very much so on Justin's side on this one. He is.
I love
Chris Godwin is.
Good.
Yeah.
Tell me I'm wrong. Let's go.
On literally every single value list that I have. Because again, for all the reasons that Justin stated, yeah, we're going to get a dip in production. We do have a new offensive coordinator, so maybe things won't be. I mean, they're going to be bad. Like, let's not skirt around it. It is going to be a bad situation. But if I'm comparing, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, knowing that the offense is going to have to push volume, knowing that it's going to be tough for them to rely on their run game with a bevy of running backs that have no proven volume in the NFL. If I'm going to trust Baker Mayfield to throw to one receiver, it's going to be Chris Godwin. I'm not trusting him to go downfield. I'm not trusting him with red zone targets. There's not going to be a lot of touchdowns here. But I don't think the touchdowns are going to affect Chris Godwin that much. We're going to see a decent amount of volume for him. So he's the one that I'm targeting. And I like the discount that we're getting on him. I'm not reaching for it, but I think he's a perfectly fine value. So
it's also going to be a really
Chris
concentrated
Godwin.
passing attack too, right? Like there's
Sure,
not a lot of
sure.
options, especially with Russell Gage hurt. So even if the volume's coming down, I think Godwin's going to be the guy with the most targets there. And who's he really fighting with other than Mike Evans? Rashad White, I'm not totally convinced there. Kate Otten at tight end, I don't really think he's a star. So I think it's going to be mostly about those two receivers. And I think Godwin's going to be the one that has the better fantasy season.
It's 2-1. I'm on the mat. You guys put me there. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to come back and leave everybody with this thought. 3 words that Tera said: trust Baker Mayfield. I want that to linger in quotes for everybody. I know you said it, but again, the words trust, Baker, and Mayfield, we're all together in a row. And when we're all together in a row, that's something to everybody. Just I want to leave you with that. And then I want to remind you all that the Fantasy Fest is brought to you by Betting Pros. Make sure you go join our YouTube channel over at Betting Pros, youtube.com/Betting Pros. And also don't forget, we've got amazing things going on there at BP. I'm going to be hosting the NFL show all season long there. Fitz is going to be with me. Erickson's going to be with me. We have a lot of amazing guests lined up too. And we have an amazing contest, bettingpros.com/NFL contest, where we're going to be giving away weekly prizes, monthly prizes, Fantasy Pros swag, Betting Pros swag, you name it. Also, we're giving away a 1-year premium upgrade on both apps, not to mention an annual yearly prize to the best person who wins the entire contest, an autographed Jackson Smith and Jigba jersey. That's pretty darn good last time I checked. So go download the BP app, sync all your sports books, get lined up so you can start betting smarter, not harder. Go premium if you want to, too. Use the best tools in the planet, which are Betting Pros. Find the best lines to make the best bets. That's how you make the most cash. All right, let's get to the next guy on the list here because I'm tired of talking about that guy. No more Chris Godwin for me. I'm going to bed. Give me number 4 on your list. I believe we are back to Tera. Let's go.
I'm going to take us to another shaky situation, unfortunately, over in Arizona for Marquise Brown. Again, shaky because we have no timeline on Kyler Murray's return. We've got a brand new coaching staff. We've got no direct offensive track record. It's not like Indianapolis where you can look and say, look, here's what Shane Steichen could do for Anthony Richardson because we have this to point to. We don't have that with Arizona. But that's where the bargain comes in. We've got a good discount on Marquise Brown. And he is the clear wide receiver one in that offense. Rondale Moore has had a little bit of success. Michael Wilson coming on strong as a rookie, very promising. But this is the situation for Marquise Brown to finally step into for the year, the wide receiver one of this offense. Looking at 2022, when he was operating as the wide receiver one before DeAndre Hopkins was back from his suspension, Brown got off to a amazing start. Wide receiver 5, averaging 18 fantasy points per game in PPR. Then he got injured, came back, horrible quarterback situation, and averaged less than 8 fantasy points per game. It was a nightmare. But you do have to account for the fact that when Brown returned, he was not the wide receiver one. So we can't really utilize that because Hopkins was there. He was playing second fiddle, unfortunately, but now he finally has the opportunity to be that wide receiver one. And while there won't be massive upside without Kyler Murray, it will be better than those 8 fantasy points per game. And Kyler Murray will be back at some point. So if we get Kyler Murray mid-season, I think what's going to happen here is you're just going to have to take your lumps early on. Brown is not going to be a super reliable early on player with Colt McCoy or maybe Clayton Tune at quarterback. Who knows? We can, you could see it go either direction.
Clayton Tune. I mean, come on.
I'm kind of hoping that he kind of stepped because he's looked good.
It was
man.
fun in college.
Young,
I mean, come on. How do you not root for a guy named Clayton Tune? I mean, come on. This sounds like a quarterback. I'm pretty sure he was the 3rd string guy at Varsity Blues, like right behind Vanderbeek, who was the number 2. It was Clayton Tune right after that. I'm almost 100% sure. But you're right. Look, this is another guy too, where kind of like Godwin, like the volume's going to be there. It's just whether or not the quarterback can make it work. Boone, let's get to another guy on your list. Who else do you have as a wide receiver 3 who could make up all the way, climb the ladder to maybe 1?
I mentioned before that I was going through this string of guys that have been there before, have been these wide receiver ones for fantasy. And the next one up is Tyler Lockett. And I don't know that I would have said this prior to the Jackson Smith and Jigba injury, but now we're looking at a situation where I think we all kind of agree. I know Pete Carroll's saying, he might be back for week 1. I think that's a stretch. A lot of the injury analysts are saying that there's a chance they could hold him out through the week 5 bye.
Oof.
That's a possibility. That could delay JSN actually taking on a big role in this offense. And then you look at Lockett and what he's done. Top 15 fantasy receiver each of the last 5 years, 8 touchdowns in all of those seasons. So if we see him come out, start hot, they bring in JSN, I think we're going to see all 3 of those guys mix in. And I think if Lockett's off to a hot start, the chances of him sort of, fading away because JSN hits the ground running in week 1, that's the odds of that happening probably are a lot lower now with this injury. So I really like him there. I talked about my strength of schedule matrix earlier. Seahawks receivers, they have the 3rd easiest schedule there. I really, really like Lockett now, especially early in the season. Maybe it's a scenario where you get him and then you trade him away before JSN comes back or something like that. But if we're talking about guys that have a chance to get up into the top 12, it's a hard thing to find. You made us come up with 5 each. That's a lot of names.
It did.
And Lockett is certainly somebody that's done it before and is going to have a shot to do it again, especially because of this JSN injury.
Do you think there's extra incentive for Lockett being on the contract year potentially?
I think that definitely could be the case. I mean, and I know the arguments against it, the age and stuff, but he's continued to produce, 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. I mean, are we going to be surprised if he ends up in the top 15 again? I don't think we would be.
I have a ton of best ball Tyler Lockett.
We keep making this mistake every year.
Boone, I got a ton of best ball Tyler Lockett this year just because it was so cheap that I just went, look, I mean, you're going to tempt me to do it. He's a best ball wide receiver anyway, and now you're going to give him to me for half price, it felt like, because everybody was just falling in love with JSN. And look, I get it. I understand why people love JSN, but they want to win games. And if, the rookies, obviously starting off hurt is not the way you want to start the season, but my goodness, like there's every opportunity for Tyler Lockett to continue to be Tyler Lockett again. And JSN just kind of has this as the, I won't say redshirt year, but a year where he's learning and getting healthy and figuring out the league. And maybe he comes on more, towards the latter part, something you worry about maybe when you get to the playoffs. All right, let's get to the big names here. 2 more names left on these lists. And yes, I did task these 2 with finding wide receiver 3s that could be 1s. And I think they've done an excellent job. So give it up for them because this is not easy. These are fun scripts we're writing. We're having fun conversations. But regardless, even if they don't reach this, the idea that we're trying to lay out is that these are wide receivers that can jump tiers. And they have upside to jump 2 tiers. And I think that's something that everybody covets. All right, let's get to one more on your list. Tara, who do you have?
It's Jahan Dotson. Absolutely love him. Big difference between him and most of the other players on this list is that we haven't obviously seen him be a wide receiver 1, and he is technically not the wide receiver 1 on his team playing next to Terry McLaurin. So that does make it tough. We're asking a lot, but there is so much potential with Dotson. Again, when you look at him and you saw his red zone usage last season, 5 red zone touchdowns. Reality check, it's obviously not going to be repeatable at the same rate because if that were the case, he would just be the wide receiver 1, period. But when you look at somebody who, as a rookie, was put into that situation and they clearly immediately trusted him to give him that type of usage, that speaks volumes to the role that he's going to play in this offense. I think that he could be a key red zone target, and that's an area where Terry McLaurin typically hasn't produced big numbers. New offensive coordinators, Eric Bieniemy, Sam Howell. I mean, this could be a good situation. We've also got Terry McLaurin dealing with a turf toe as well, unfortunately. Maybe that affects him throughout the season. Dotson really does have wide receiver 1 upside, and a lot of things have to hit, but the talent is there.
I agree. And I think this is one of those names that's getting a lot of helium right now, but I don't think it's wrong, and I don't think it's risen to a point where it's undraftable. That's the problem. This is why we can't have nice things. We talk about things that are a discount until they're no longer a discount, and this is why we never have nice things. The next thing you know, the ADP gets too much, but that's our job. That's what we're trying to do here, make everybody savvy about this stuff. I guarantee you, though, Dotson's not going to go too high where all of a sudden it's something you don't feel comfortable with the investment. I agree 1,000% with you on that one too. All right, so Dotson's another good name. Boone, is there one more you can scratch out just for me? Maybe who has the upside to be a wide receiver 1 in that wide receiver 3 group? Pretty please.
There is. This is definitely the longest shot of all the guys that I've said, though. And truth be told, Tara put her names in the list first, and I 100% would have put Dotson in this spot. But since we wanted to make sure they were different, went with another guy who I think could be a breakout this year, a very polarizing prospect. Some people are upset. They think he's overvalued because all these highlight reel grabs, and you have casual fantasy managers overreacting to that, which is true. And then at the same time, we have a prospect who, missed most of his final college season enters the NFL, puts up top 40 fantasy numbers on a per game basis over his last 14 contests as a rookie, does that with underwhelming quarterback play. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm talking about George Pickens. Everybody wants to be down on this guy. You have a small faction, I think, that's still saying that, yes, this guy could be a true alpha receiver in the NFL. He has those kind of traits. But because a lot of people in the fantasy community got overexcited early on about him, I think it was kind of, in vogue to be against him and to kind of say, well, there's no way he's going to be that kind of player in the NFL. I think he still could be. We're going to see this offense, and Tera talked about it with Diontae Johnson, that Kenny Pickett is kind of the key here. And from what we're hearing, Kenny Pickett looks a lot better going into his second season. Guess what? These players can develop along the way. These young players can look better. It's not just going to be what we saw of them as rookies. The chemistry will improve when you have a young quarterback out there. So we're going to see Pickett improve this year. How much? We don't know yet, but I think he's going to be better. And we're going to see George Pickens improve too. He's not just going to come out and be the exact same player. There's been lots of talk in the offseason that he's expanding his route tree. And like I mentioned, he has these alpha traits. He has that ability to win against DBs in these jump ball scenarios, but he has the ability, we saw it in the preseason on his one touchdown, he can just take over a game. He can make plays downfield. And I'm excited to see how high he can rise. I don't know if it's going to be into a top 12 fantasy slot, but I think that is possible for him. It's within his range of outcomes. And you mentioned some guys that you have a lot of. Well, I have a lot of George Pickens on my team, so I might be a little bit biased.
That's
but
all right.
I think that's the ceiling that he's bringing, and I'm hoping that he can hit it.
Increasing the route tree. You guys have increased the knowledge tree around here. I love you both. It's great to talk football with you all again. Thank you to Tera for joining us. Thank you to Justin for joining us again here on the Fantasy Fest. It's great to have you both. And of course, make sure you are liking the stream, and don't forget to follow us on the Twitter machine, or X, or whatever the hell they're calling it now. And don't forget to subscribe to Fantasy Pros YouTube channel and click that bell till it goes ding for notifications. Great stuff from both of you. We're going to hit a quick break. We come back, more Fantasy Football Festival of Friendship or something like that. When we return, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this.